Good morning. How are you this morning? Yeah, me too. So for those of you who are here for the first time, this is a completely new seating arrangement. As a matter of fact, it's a whole new design. What happened was it was Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday. So we had this carpet put in February, and I don't know if you guys noticed, but I did. There was this like huge seam down the middle that was kind of obnoxious, and we told the carpet people that we paid a lot of money and we really wanted a nice carpet, and they said we stand 100% behind our work and we will replace your carpet for free, and which was great. So in February, this is whenever I talked to the building owner, and so we knew that eventually someday we'd get new carpet. And on Tuesday evening around 5 p.m. I got a phone call from the building owner that says they'd love to do our carpet on Thursday. And I don't know if you know, but everything has to be removed from the room. So the speakers have to be taken down, all the sound equipment has to be torn apart, and everything has to be taken out of the room. So I got this on Tuesday, and it was just like me. And I'm all, oh. But fortunately, we had a foundations class. And I talked to the foundations class. I'm like, hey, you guys, I sort of have this problem. And we came up with the solution of ending class early and everybody helping me move everything out of the room, which was wonderful. So I want to thank everybody who's in that foundations class for the assistance and the love that you've given this community, and the big, weight that you took off of my shoulders, because I was kind of wondering how it was going to happen. And it gave a perfect opportunity to redesign how we're looking at this space, because as you know, or as many of you may know, we're growing. We've had several times where we haven't had enough seats for people, and so I had this idea to do this new arrangement. And what I love is that this is kind of how creation works, like there's sort of this thing that comes in, life happens, right? Life happens. It's like shift happens, life happens, and as life is happening, it's kind of what do you do with it? What do you do with it? And I stay open to the possibility that maybe there's a solution that I can't even think about. And that's exactly what happened through me this week, that there was a solution that I hadn't even thought about, but came to fruition as a result of the foundations class, through the consensus, the collaboration, the co-creation of a group of like-minded individuals. So I want to thank everybody for that. And I'd like to invite everybody afterwards, if you want to, after we have our potluck lunch, to help us maybe finish pulling everything out of the room and reorganizing after we eat, of course. Well, there was one day, Jesus, Moses, and an old man, they went on a golfing trip. And Moses, he was the first to tee off. So Moses went ahead and he teed off, and off went the ball right into the water hazard. Well, Moses, he was like, oh, this is no problem for me. And so he lifts up his golf club, and the waters part, and the ball rolls right through that water hazard. And he's like, all right, Jesus, take that. So Jesus is like, okay, cool. So Jesus goes, tees off, and the ball goes again right for the water hazard. And he's like, oh. Immediately he gets down on his knees and he prays, starts praying. And the ball, it hits the water, but it just kind of skates across the water and just rolls 2 feet away from the hole. And Jesus is like, So then the old man, he goes to tee off, and he's all creaky, and he goes and he tees off, and the ball just goes straight for the water. But as it goes into the water, a fish kind of jumps out and swallows it. And they start laughing at him. And then an eagle comes down out of the sky and it swoops up the fish. And then he's flying off with a golf ball, and they're like, so long, golf ball. But then a lightning bolt gets that eagle, and he scares him, and he drops the fish, and the fish falls right down, and out comes the golf ball into the hole. And Jesus says to Moses, I'm not bringing Dad next time. So today we're talking about what is God? What is God? So I want to put that question out to you. What is God? Push this away. It's like, huh? All that is. Including us. Yeah. Anybody else have words? Yeah, love. Source, energy. Possibilities. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's kind of our concept today. You're going to say something? Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I find God as creative energy expressing itself.
Creative energy expressing itself. Ah, it's so beautiful. You guys are on it. This is what we're talking about in Foundations, too, is what is God? In the New Thought Dictionary, it says, absolute, the God principle, the supreme, the unknowable, unthinkable, unmanifest, yet manifest in all. The unconditioned, yet in every condition. That which is back of all that is manifest in all the universe, known and unknown to human. That which is all life, all power, the formless, which is all form. The changeless, which includes all change. The infinite life principle, omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient. The great self-existent cause back of all that is. So there's only one cause that is back of all that is. It sprung forth into itself and into all creation, having no beginning and no end. It is forever re-expressing itself. Now, this is very different from what I was taught as a Methodist when I was growing up. I did have that concept that God was Big Daddy in the sky, and he had this beard, and he was an old white dude, for sure. And he was also kind of like Santa Claus. He was checking his list, who's naughty, who's nice. And, I had to beg or beseech God in order to maybe be bestowed the privilege of having God's blessings. And it was a very other than experience. Like God is other than me. I am separate from God. But when we talk about how God is in everything, through everybody, it makes perfect sense. What would God make people out of if it's infinite? If you start talking about infinity, infinite means there's no space where it is not. So therefore, if it's making stuff out of itself, then it's still making its stuff out of itself. And we're still in it. And we're all a part of it. Now, when we're taught in school about God or creation, there's kind of this history that's been happening. There's some science and there's some myths in our old version of science. There's a book called Spontaneous Evolution by Steve Behrman and Bruce Lipton. And basically they're talking about, there's two myths in the old science. One, everything is separate from everything else. Two, our inner experiences have no effect on what goes on outside our bodies. Now, many of you may know when you were taught science in school, this is very true. This is very much in alignment with what we were taught growing up. Not everybody, but many people had this teaching. And those myths were supported by the Cartesian model. The Cartesian model was it was based on the idea that we can solve our problems by dissecting things and examining their parts. Like if a clock breaks, you take the clock apart, figure out what's broken, and then you fix it, and then you put it back together. Right, and then we figured this out with human bodies. So great evolutionary strides came when we thought this way. Well, there was a woman, Candace Pert, she wrote this book called Molecules of Emotions. And she also talks about how, so we had these kind of histories, these myths that we were brought up to believe, and we had this model, this Cartesian model, but really it came from René Descartes, who's the philosopher and he's the founding father of modern medicine, a lot of people think. So she said in this book that he was forced to make a turf deal with the Pope in order to get human bodies for dissection. So what he said is Descartes said he wouldn't have anything to do with the soul or the mind or the emotions. Those aspects of the human experience were under the exclusive jurisdiction of the church. And so he could claim the physical realm as his own, and the church could claim those realm as their own. And the bargain was made, and that set the tone of Western science as we know it. So we have the two distinct separate spheres that never overlap. And that's kind of still what's going on in mainstream science until you start getting into quantum mechanics, quantum physics, those types of realities. We realize that that's not true at all. But that's what we were brought up as, that the soul, the spirit, the emotions, it all belongs to the religious organizations, and science only has the physical proponents of life. Which, of course, doesn't work when we're talking about God is all there is. God is that every aspect of our beingness, the physical, the non-physical. And yet, we have this integrated history in our thinking that causes issues and problems in our life and causes very distinct, I want to say, separations from how we perceive life and how we act in our life. Because we're acting a lot from just the physical, and then the emotional we think is all not connected. The interesting thing is we've really understood recently a lot more on how deeply we are interconnected, on how deeply our mind and our thoughts affect the reality that's going on around us. They have the quantum physics, the double slit experiment. I don't know if you've heard of that. You should look up Dr. Quantum. There's like this little thing, but it's really a very cool experience where they had a photon they were shooting a photon against like a receiver, and the photon was behaving like a wave. So they put it through one slit, and as it goes through this one slit, it behaves like a wave. Now, a wave goes like this, right? And so when they had kind of a backdrop, they'd shoot lots of photons so they could see the eventual effect of a wave. They would see that there's a wave happening. So you'd have kind of bands of on and off, right? Like a wave, right? So that was kind of the effect. And then they put two slits, and they realized they were shooting a photon through the slits, and they'd still get that kind of wave experience, but it would be like two intersecting waves. So they'd see on the other on the receiver, I don't know what it was, but something that's receiving that is kind of like hitting against the intersecting waves. Well, then they're like, well, let's put a camera and let's try and observe which one of these two slits the photon is going through, because they couldn't figure it out. It looked like it might have been going through both of them. It was kind of weird, the one photon going through both holes and making a wave. And so they put a little thing observing, and whenever they had an observational instrument observing kind of like which one went through the slit, the photon behaved differently. It behaved like a particle. So it would only go through one slit, and then it would actually make a little slit mark on the thing that it was his receiver end. So it wouldn't make the wave pattern; it made the slit pattern. And they could observe, but it would make a distinct one-way thing. When they weren't observing, it was a wave of possibility. So the interesting part of that experiment is that when we observe something, reality collapses into a certain direction just based on our observation of it. Which means that however we think and however we act affects everything around us, because everything is in a wave of possibility. And as we step into this idea of being a participant in reality, then we start creating a reality that is perceivable, that we have around us right now. Holmes said, Ernest Holmes, our founder, not my buddy, my Holmesies, Ernest Holmes. He said, everything is of the one ultimate substance. All substance is as indestructible as God, for all is God. God's center is everywhere, and circumference is nowhere. So the interesting thing about this is that it makes me think about what could I be thinking in order to create a new reality, in order to have a collapsible reality in a certain direction that would be supportive of my life. If you really believed that you, like your Creator, are made of God essence, would you be more courageous in your actions?
Yes.
What would you do if you realized you could not fail? Risk more, yeah. Would you open to a wider array of possibilities? What if the infinite universe of possibilities is open to us at every single moment, and we simply get to choose what possibility we want to step in? Now, I know this is kind of, there's some things like life happens, like my carpet gets changed, right? But there's the idea of what is the essence that I'm bringing to this place. So for me, there's an outside change that's happening. Now, I want to say that the outside change that happened was a result of this community having a standard of excellence that caused us to have this outside change happen. And I recognize that. But part of it started here. Part of it started here because each and every one of us are stepping into the idea of creating community, stepping into the idea of having beauty around us. We had many weeks of talking about beauty and everything around us. Each one of us is stepping into the idea of living into the life of our dreams. But what happens whenever you're not creating the life of your dreams? When you're not consciously creating the life of your dreams, you're consciously, unconsciously getting your life created by whatever the movement of society is. So if you don't want to have what's going on in the news happening in your life, then that means you get to start choosing what a new reality would be like for yourself. Nori Huddle wrote a book called Butterfly, and I really have to read this. It's kind of a little long, but it's really cool. She says the caterpillar's new cells are called imaginal cells. And so the caterpillar has these new cells that come into fruition. They're called imaginal cells, and they resonate at a different frequency. They're so totally different than caterpillar cells that its immune system thinks it's enemies and starts eating it up. But these new imaginal cells continue to appear, more and more and more of them. Pretty soon the caterpillar's immune system cannot destroy them fast enough. More and more imaginal cells survive, and then this amazing thing happens. The little, tiny, lonely imaginal cells start to clump together into friendly little groups. They all resonate together at the same frequency, passing information on from one to the other. And then after a while, another amazing thing happens. The clumps of imaginal cells start to cluster together. A long string of clumping and clustering imaginal cells, all resonating at the same frequency, all passing information from one to another there inside the chrysalis. A wave of good news travels through the entire system, and it lurches and it heaves, but it's not quite yet the butterfly. But then at one point, the entire string of imaginal cells suddenly realize all together that it is completely something different than the caterpillar. Something new, something wonderful. And that realization is a shout of the birth of the butterfly. Since the butterfly now knows it's a butterfly, the little tiny little imaginal cells no longer have to do all those things that the individual little cells have to do. Now they're part of a multi-celled organism, a family who can share the work. Each new butterfly cell can take on a different job, and everyone is important. And each cell begins to do that very thing it is most drawn to do. And every other cell encourages to do just that, which is a great way to organize a butterfly. Or what we're doing here. So can you imagine this group of us as imaginal cells? And we get to imagine our new idea of what we'd like as community, what we'd like as this Bay Area, what we'd like as this planet. And we could resonate together at a certain frequency and get together utilizing our strengths, where each person gets to do the job that they love doing, that they're singing, that they get to just be in their bliss of being their light. So I wonder, are you hanging around the people that resonate with you? Are you creating a system, a family of people so that we can create a shift and change in this world? And if you are, what would that world look like? What would it be expressed like? I'm really invested in this whole idea of creating a new world, of creating a world that works for everyone. Because a lot of the world is not working for a lot of the people right now. Now, we can be at the leading edge of creation by dreaming up a new idea of possibility. Something that not only works for you, but maybe works for everybody who's in prison right now. Something that not only works for you, but maybe works for everybody who's homeless or who doesn't have water on the planet. I mean, it's completely possible. We can do all of that. We can create that. And we can do it by having choices every day in our own daily life. The place that you start with is yourself first. Now, I have to ask, how many of you have a daily spiritual practice? A lot, yeah. Now, what if you bumped up your daily spiritual practice just a little bit? I went to Carlsbad Caverns a couple of weeks ago, and the really cool thing about Carlsbad Caverns is that they were formed like 4 to 6 million years ago, and the cave formations took like 1 million years to create. And then they had these limestone stalactites and stalagmites. So stalactite is the ones that hang from the ceiling. I know this because they hold tight to the ceiling, and the stalagmite that's coming up from the floor, they might reach it the top. So they grow by being created like 10 centimeters every 1,000 years. 10 centimeters every 1,000 years. I mean, when I went to Carlsbad Caverns, they were like 50-foot columns, like these gigantic columns, right? It was amazing. And some of them are over 190,000 years old. The same things, and the tour guide was like, you know, when you come and like when you bring your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren, these caves are going to look the same. They will barely have changed. But it makes me realize, though, how powerful spiritual practice is. Because just one drip of water consistently over and over and over again, over time, created those amazing, beautiful creations. Now, what if we did our spiritual practice like that, consistently over and over again? How much can we do in our world? What could we build up of beauty in our world? Imagine all of us together, all of these little drips of water together, building together this amazing, magical world that is supportive of everybody, where we're generous and sharing of our resources, where we understand that every human life matters. Every person on this planet matters. And I know that each and every person here is a catalyst to this new world, but I wonder, is there something that you can do this week that will help support this new world and emerging? Do you have some ideas? Let's kind of collaborate. What could you do?
My prayer practice just yesterday. Usually I'll maybe do a general treatment for something I'm interested in. That it was more detailed. It was longer because it was more detailed and intentional, and it included more things and more people. So it's really.
So you have a prayer practice that instead of being a general prayer, you started becoming more clear on including more people. And I'd like to encourage you, thank you, Vanessa, I'd request that in your prayer practice you would pray for this community and every person who's attending. Can you imagine if each and every one of us were praying for all of us to thrive? How powerful would that be? For this community, everybody who walks into those doors, for them to thrive. And then not only that, the world, right? We can be the catalyst for that. Thank you, Vance.
I've been practicing being peaceful. Usually I'm a worrywart.
Ah.
And I've been making progress. And as I be peace, and I walk into a new space, it becomes a more peaceful space. And I can sense the hugeness of the task and the possibility. So.
Yeah. So you used to be a worrywart. I heard that.
Yes.
You used to be a worrywart, and now what you're doing is before you even go into a space, you're declaring that you are a peaceful presence, and you're bringing that peaceful presence into the space that you walk into.
I would qualify that more than you have. Being generous.
Well, we are human. It's okay.
Honestly, I am doing that more, and that's
Uh-huh.
the direction I want to go in my life. So it's, no matter how small, more.
Yeah. And can you imagine if you're sitting in your car just before you walk into any place?
Even going down the freeway.
Or being peace in the car. That's a big deal. Yeah. So being peace in the car,
In my life.
in your life. And then also imagine sitting in your car and being peace, cultivating that sense of peace before you walk into any space. Like having a conscious choice. Like you could just think of your door, your car door opening, like you could put like a little peace sign or something on your car just to remind you, oh, I'm going to be peace when I walk into this space.
It's just a practice.
Yeah.
I'm waving at more people. I'm smiling at more people, and I don't know, on the freeway or wherever
Aw.
it might be, in the grocery store or whatever it might be, because it makes me feel more peaceful. So there's an instant payoff,
Uh-huh.
but I get the smiles back. And so it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And so at some point I'll stop talking it talk, and I'll be able to be I talk.
Ah,
And say I'm growing into I. Fantastic.
exactly.
That's hard for my to absorb.
And I recognize you, Vance, for saying that, because a lot of us, as we're trying on new things, it's more like the thing that we're trying on, and then one day it becomes a thing that we actually embody, and we are. Yep.
Yeah.
And it's okay to be in that space of transition, by the way. Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah, it is huge. Thank you, Vance. Anybody else want more? Yeah?
I've been doing forgiveness exercises for my father, and 70 times 7, it says that in the Bible,
Mhm.
forgive somebody. And, just the idea of certain political candidates that are bringing up feelings of abuse
Mhm.
by the patriarchy. And, I think that he's like going to crash and burn in the patriarchy, and it's going to be a new opening. So I'm trying to look at it as a positive thing.
Mhm.
That maybe we'll have, a new leader that can do something. I mean, she's not perfect, but.
So I'm here, but what I'm hearing you say is forgiveness.
And it's all connected.
It is all connected.
It's all connected to what's going on a national basis. I think that's how we're all connected.
I love that. If you have any animosity towards anybody in politics right now, that is a practice to do, is a forgiveness practice of 70 times 7, which is really letting go and recognizing that we're all connected and that everything that is happening is part of the greater whole that is emerging, and the greater whole is always causing life to expand, and it is an evolution that's happening right now. So whatever is occurring for the highest and greatest good. And it's an evolution that we're all part of and we can all contribute to. Thank you. So I have one more thing that I read in the book here. The ecology of mind. This is peace is every step. There are little tiny nuggets in here, lots of little nuggets. So Thich Nhat Hanh says, we need harmony, we need peace. Peace is based on respect for life, the spirit, and the reverence for life. Not only do we have to respect the lives of human beings, but we have to respect the lives of animals, vegetables, and minerals. Rocks can be alive. A rock can be destroyed. The earth also. The destruction of our health by pollution in the air and water is linked to the destruction of the minerals. The way we farm, the way we deal with our garbage, these all are related to each other. So ecology should be a deep ecology. Not only deep, but universal, because there is pollution in our consciousness. We need to protect the ecology of the mind, or violence and recklessness will continue to spill over into many areas of our life. So I want to encourage you to keep your mind clean. Start stepping into the imagination. Be the imaginal cells and be the ones to create the vision instead of the ones that's creating the destruction that's happening on the planet. So we can either be a creator or a destroyer, your choice. But I choose to be creator. How about you? Let's do it. All right, let's pray. So knowing right here and right now that this is the space of creation, that I am in the place of creation right now, that God is the infinite everything and that all possibilities reside in God, which means every potentiality is available to me right here and right now. And so as I recognize this truth, I know that this is my truth, that I have every possibility and potentiality available to me, that each and every person has every possibility available to them right now, and that through this prayer, as I declare this word, I know that the infinite creator is the one that does the work. And I merely have the job of dreaming, of declaring, of speaking my word, just as God spoke the original word into creation, that I speak this word into creation. And so I see a world that works for everyone. I see a world where there are conscious diversity of the beauty of the recognition of what's happening here right now. That each and every person who sees somebody that's different than themselves, that they absolutely see with the eyes of the divine, that this other is part of me, that I am part of the other, that we are in this dance eternally, dancing with each other in a way that awakens each and every one of us into a higher consciousness, into a higher expression of love. And so as I choose to be this expression of love, I see and recognize my own work to do. And I know that as I do this work of love and light in the world, that I dream of a new possibility, that it creates through me a way that I think is like out of no way. But God can create something out of nothing. And so everything is possible. And so I step into this possibility knowing that my life continues to get better and better, that I'm guided to the right and perfect steps, that I'm guided to the right and perfect words, that I'm guided to the right and perfect actions in order to uplift and empower this entire humankind on this planet. And so I know that happens day by day, minute by minute, moment by moment, in me and through me. And so as I accept this, I accept and claim peace for myself. I accept and claim peace for each and every person here. I accept and claim love. I accept and claim power. I accept and claim light, knowing that it shines forth through each and every one of us, knowing that it keeps getting better. And so I surrender into this possibility, knowing that I'm guided, the path is illuminated before me, and I simply walk forward knowing it's already done, unfolding beautifully, easily, and effortlessly, and I get to fly like the butterfly. It is good. Thank you, God, and so it is.